1, so we will call to order our special community working session. Oh, that's the wrong agenda I'm on. All right, Jeff can't be with us tonight. He's on some family business out of town, I think, so. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Small little group tonight. Do you want to start with giving us an update on things going on with the district?
Sure. Probably the number one thing people are curious about is the building project. So everything is, for the most part, considering construction, going on track, and we're running a little bit ahead. Matt shared that things are actually coming in under budget so far, so that's good news. We had some setbacks. One of them is the boiler situation. There's like I think a back order. They're just trying to get that figured out, which is typical. We're going to have some of these issues. But UNESCO, which is now called, I'm spacing their names, they send us as a board updates weekly at exactly what they're doing, where they're at. So I feel like there's a lot of transparency on what's taking place. Right now we have our permit just to do the site work, and so the state will be giving the permit, they said, hopefully in the next week or two for like the building part of it. There's just a little bit of backlog in that system, but we're not concerned about that at all. And everything's on track. The goal is still to finish the project by August of 2021. So it's kind of, I mean, one of the benefits of the students being out a little bit earlier is we can get started a little bit earlier. So that was one benefit from the whole situation. In regards to what's going to happen next fall, I don't know if any of you listened to the 2 o'clock update. So it's still, we don't know. What we're being asked to do, all districts, is to provide like 3 contingencies plans. So 1 would be all students back, 2 would be like a hybrid model, so partly back and not back, and then 3 would be completely distance learning. So that's kind of the information that we're given at this time. The goal is, I think by July 27th, is they're supposed to say what's going to happen. So that puts the districts in a really challenging position. Now imagine if you're a faculty member or staff member trying to prepare at that point. So it's like kind of all these contingency plans and then not knowing what's going to happen. One of the questions asked today was even with budget. So for example, if you have social distancing on buses, you have to have more bus routes. That's not figured into our budget. So all those things, like, yes, we're taking that into consideration. Yes, we're taking that into consideration. But there really aren't a lot of answers that I'm aware of yet, so it's kind of a wait and see game. I know that, you know, districts were pushing to get it answered earlier, but in the update today, and it did make sense to me that we're not giving an answer right now, because imagine if we had given an answer 3 weeks ago. So much has already changed. So you don't want to make a decision too early because things are going to change, so they're trying to do it at what they feel is the last kind of possible time to still allow for preparation. So that's kind of where we're at for what's going to happen in the fall. Another question that comes up a lot is people are curious as to connectivity. So do our students have access to internet? And so we had, I think it was right around, I should find the actual number. We deployed 32 hotspots to our students this year, and we have more available. And it sounds like, you know, everybody seemed to have access. Now that's limiting depending on what type of service you have, but it wasn't as huge of an issue in our district as it is in some districts. So I think overall we felt things went pretty well. The teachers were really focused on contact with their students. A big focus has been on mental health as students are home. Parents are home, there's potentially a lot of stress in the homes if people were laid off, or all those things and factors come into it. And so I think anybody who felt that school would be as normal, I mean, that's just kind of impossible, but a high focus was on making sure that our students' mental health, and we were having contact with those students, and the students we weren't having contact with, that the teachers were really on top of how do we get in touch with them, how do we, you know, make sure that they're engaged. Any questions about that? Anything so far?
What kind of feedback did you get from people in the community as far as the distance learning goes?
Very mixed.
Yeah.
So I think it just depended. Like I have 4 kids in the district and they all have different experiences. So, you know, my senior, obviously very different experience. There's a lot of different things that come with that, down to my 4th grader. So I think it depends on the age of the students, and I think it depends on probably the stress level of the parents. So like I have the ability, I'm working from home right now, but I am working out in our shop in a different office. So, you know, like that makes it a little bit easier. So I think it just depends. I think overall, one thing that I have heard is that parents felt that the teachers cared and the district cared, and they tried really, really hard. So that part I think was consistent. The part that was inconsistent is just kind of people's feelings like, my student didn't learn as much, or, you know, and some parents were like, my son or daughter did awesome. Like they totally love this remote. So I think one of the things that we've been talking about is we don't ever want to go back to normal, because normal didn't suit all students anyway. So if we could, in a way, have a hybrid of how do we integrate more of what, like the best things that we learn from distance learning and apply that to school. Because there are students who do better in that type of scenario. So not going back just to rows of students and a teacher at the front of the room. So it's really trying to like peel away what did we learn and how can we apply it. But I would say it's mixed, but I would say that's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, any other questions about that? Let's see it. Those are probably the biggest updates. Oh, the other one would be the meals. So this program, we ended up serving on average about 800 meals per day. And in May, it was around 1,000 meals per day. And so the meals were brought to several locations, and it's all free. So whether you're 18 and under is the only qualification. You don't even have to be like in the district. If you live in Hazel within this area, you can have these free meals. So that was a real success. Initially, personally didn't do it because I'm like, well, my kids don't need that. But then we started to do it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great, because it's one less thing I had to worry about, is the kids like aren't just eating cereal and toast. They were eating much more nutritious meals. So that was really awesome to see it get up to 1,000 meals per day that we were serving. And what else is there that I can share? One thing is just a question that Matt wanted me to bring forward was with the motorcycle licensing course, is to just have a conversation about, is there an option that we could actually move where it currently is through the remodel and addition. He was thinking behind on the east end of the school between the football fields and the school. That's where the entrance, like kind of the main entrance to the fitness center will be, and there won't be parking spots per se, and there'll be enough space like for emergency equipment to turn around. And his question was, would that be an option so it could be closed off when there is, you know, the training and the back part of the school, so that we can add more spaces in the front part and in the middle school parking lot.
Who runs that?
I believe the city.
Yeah.
The state of Minnesota does. You know, I think that as long as it's at the same location, they're probably okay with it. To get them to change to a totally different venue. I know last year it wasn't working out to do it at the school, so I contacted them and said, can we try somewhere else in Painesville? And they said, no, that takes an octagon to get that changed. Absolutely won't even mess with it.
Okay.
But because it's still on the school grounds, potentially it would still be okay. But right now, until further notice, we're not doing any testing in Painesville, and we have no idea how long that's going to continue.
So
I think it's most likely through the summer, if not longer.
Okay. Perfect. And yeah, so that's our biggest updates. Any questions or?
How are the meals for the summer? Did it drop off quite a bit?
I don't know. The latest update I had was 1,000 in May. I assume there was a little bit of a drop off, but I don't know that. That's just my guess. I don't know what that number is. I hope it's not a drop off.
I mean, you're still doing the remotes and all.
Yep.
Pretty much the same program.
Yep. The same locations.
So if there are people living in Painesville area who aren't currently utilizing that, how would they go about getting into that program?
So the locations, there's one at the Roscoe Church, the elementary school in Painesville. Let me just make sure I have all. The Lake Henry Church, the St. Martin Church, and in Regal, in the Coronis area arena. So there's times listed, and that's on, I think, the school website. So each location has a specific time. I think it's like a half an hour window, and you just show up?
Okay. So
And
they,
then, you know, it's kind of nice, I mean, if you want to give someone a heads up, but that's not a requirement at all.
okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, we don't have a representative from the township or Centricare. So City of Painesville. I don't know who wants to do that.
I have a few notes jotted down, just letting the school know that DMV is fully open. We do not do any tests, as I mentioned earlier, so no written tests, no behind the wheel are happening in Painesville. However, they can go to St. Cloud and Wilmer and still do the testing and then come here to apply. That's an option. The St. Cloud station, I understand it's about a 3.5-hour wait, and you have to be there by 7:30 to even be allowed to test that day. Written test, you do not need appointments. Behind the wheel, you do. Those are very hard to get right now. You can try to go online and get them. I don't believe either location is accepting any kind of phone calls. They're not taking any calls. So, you know, your farm permit kids would be difficult because they can't do it online and they're not taking calls. So they almost have to go stand in line and wait those hours in line to talk to a human to get an appointment for a future date. It's not real adequate right now, but
7:30 in
We're-
the morning?
7:30 in the morning. If they're not there by 7:30, my understanding is you will not get in that day. We are about a 30 to 60 minute in-line wait, but it's going well. People seem to like the way we're handling it. That's the only thing I have. Just city is a little bit different with that process, but it seems to be going well.
Do you have anything, Ron?
I guess we could just, our street projects are finishing up this year. Obviously, on 2nd Street out by Teals across, they're finishing that access up and doing all the seating. As far as future projects, I think the city is really going to be going into a planning mode the next few years and just budgeting, letting our budgets catch up and doing actual serious planning. The one question I did have for you, I know we met with Matt Bullard, the city administrator, myself, and the engineer about Safe Routes to School program. I don't know if that's ever come up on your end of things, if you wanted to proceed with that. I think the first thing that needed to be done is there needs to be a study done. And that could include virtually anything at elementary school or at high school. So,
And that was safe route to school.
Safe Routes to School, yes.
I can follow up.
Bring it up, sure.
Yep.
Would that be where we end up with signals to cross?
Yes.
Right.
That could be part of it. I mean, it includes, sidewalks, virtually anything, signage.
Would that encompass then the road that everybody asked about behind the school where the gate is? Would that be part of, or is it just?
Possibly could be, if that's part of the study, then it would.
Okay.
I think with the construction now would be a good time to pursue that.
And so I do have, I did ask Matt about that prior to this meeting. I'm just saying, because I wasn't certain if that's kind of known the city's or where that is. Because I think our last meeting here, we talked about it. It's also dependent on like the safety of coming off onto the road. So it's not, the school can't just make that decision on what's going to happen with that road from what I understood. But the Janata Road, that is owned, I believe, by the school itself. And so potentially that road might be removed if it increases our parking needs. So that's yet to be determined. That hasn't been a decision made yet. And so that's one of the updates potentially on that road might just be closed off altogether. Because if everything gets pushed back, then we're looking for more parking spots, so.
So if you guys reopen that road, because I noticed when they did the street, they put full curb in, so there's no access there anymore to First Street.
So
So
probably.
something to be thinking about, it's, that approach is no longer there. It's a straight curb, so.
But going out, so not going behind the softball fields, but the one going out.
Towards the old armory.
Yeah, that
That's the
road.
one you were referring to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
it's
the
like-
one, okay.
Is like, what's, I think that's a question that gets brought up a lot just by community members, and I think a lot will depend on the project and depend on a lot of things.
So Bland Times Road there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was discussed pushing that further to the west to allow some stacking before they turn in there.
But I don't believe that's probably a school decision. I don't know. I actually don't know, like, how that.
I
because it
think,
is
I think that's a
road.
combination of, just talking to this, city. I know we talked about proper accesses to that area. The discussion has been moving it away from the other two intersections, so away from 55 and away from Business 23, potentially. So it was my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but we had talked about that the access point being moved basically right through the middle of where the armory is. And that would put it about mid-block then.
Adding another access.
Putting an access about mid-block at the armory. But I think the discussion was it's gonna have to go out and kind of curve back around because I think, it's football field or what else is going on in that area. So,
Yeah, I think that's where the practice will be for, and 8th and 9th graders, I think.
so that was my understanding of those, discussions, is that there was going to be another access point when we were trying to do it out on Main Street, but shifting it down, so.
I can't remember.
But ultimately, I think that probably got left with whatever the decision is, we need to come back before council for approval, I'm assuming, so.
I think also the city, to our city administrator update, we're reposting that in July, I believe is the plan at this point, the beginning of July. We'll repost and start that process.
You said mid-July or?
Beginning of July, it'll open up.
Yeah, I think at the week of the 6th, it's open internally, and then the following week, it's open to the public.
Yep. So that was a part of the COVID response was, the council felt that that would be a better decision to push that back a little bit. And then it's not necessarily an item on our agenda, but I would just want to bring up for discussion, the possibility or the idea of expanding our library at some point in the future. It's been evident to the council recently that there is a need for an expansion, but we just aren't sure with the timing and the location and the financial pieces of that. But the conversations that we did have, there was some talk of, perhaps the district and the township would maybe be willing to take part in that, since the library does serve the greater Painesville community, not just the city.
Right.
So I don't really have anywhere to go with that right now, but just kind of putting it out there as something maybe for you guys to be talking about.
I can't speak for everybody, but I think personally, the direction that I feel our district is going is very much community oriented, and I think that would be a very smart decision to have some sort of collaboration on that project. I could see a lot, depending on location, right, that will depend on what type of collaboration, well, not necessarily collaboration, but what will happen. If it's closer to the high school, that would mean different things, or closer to elementary school, but I think it's a great conversation to have.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we want to put that on for I mean, if we have another meeting in October, maybe that's something we could discuss more in depth or sooner.
So the decision, if you could clarify, the decision that was made, was it not moving at this point, or was it just not a not decision?
We just decided not to buy the Shopko building.
Okay.
That was
the only, so it's not that it's off the table to relocate or do, it's, okay.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I think that it's based on what Great River folks said, you know, our community could handle about 3 times the size of our current library. And so just based on the feedback that we got from our survey we did, I think it's evident that people in this community want more programming options and more space and the things that would open up to us as well, so.
Gotcha.
Well, funding is a big issue. And I was hoping the township would be here tonight because we're gonna look for a strong commitment there if we're gonna do anything further. The people of town cannot afford it without extra help.
Mhm.
I'm guessing you probably connected with Kimball.
Yeah. And,
Because they've done some pretty cool things too.
yeah, they did a lot of
They did a lot of
fundraising.
private
Yep.
investment. in that.
And I believe they're working on putting together the Friends of the Library 501c3 nonprofit to help with that fundraising. And I know that there's some grant options that would be available once we have a plan in place.
Some of them are pretty restricting. Barbara Arnold is helping to lead that, and she's one of my colleagues, and she said, depending on the grants, like, there's, your hands get tied one way or the other, but I don't know all the details, but they did gain, I think it was a pretty significant grant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been quite a process out there, so.
I don't know where is that at with Kimball. I've heard stories, different ways that still the community commitment is so much that they may not even do nothing, even with the grants, because there's so much. Some are 50-50 or, so it's not cut and dry the way I understand.
No, I don't think so. I mean, and I didn't talk in depth with her, but I know it's kind of like you said, there's pros and cons to it and which way you want, because there's strings attached, I think, depending on which way you go. But I was just impressed as a smaller community. They also was a lot of private investment into it, which gives me hope. I mean, in our community is very philanthropic. We've seen how over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think if the right project need.
Mhm. And I think, I mean, the Kimball project, they're building brand new facility too, which was a pretty, what was it, 1.5 million or something like that?
From what they started, a figure that they started with, I guess it is growing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's costing more than what they anticipated.
Yeah.
Campaign page. This is like right here, but
A little disappointed our other two didn't show up.
I did scribble down notes too, that the compost site and the RV dump are both open, and the parks and the equipment and the water splash pad are all open with restrictions or warnings that they're not being sanitized on a,
The RV dump only has one entrance though, right?
it does, you have to back into it, or that's what we did last night.
The other one's poured already, but it's not like.
Any word, Ron, on when the fishing pier is going in?
We are waiting on a couple of poles.
where's that going in?
At Veterans Park.
Oh,
It's the agreement with the DNR and city and township participation.
It's beautiful, sitting down there.
It is.
It'll be a fantastic addition to the park. Anything else anybody wants to talk about?
I can mention just a couple things in the zoning and building world. The building permit has been submitted. It's being currently reviewed for the second phase of the community apartments. So there'll be 24 additional units going up
Over on 55?
on 55.
Oh,
Yep.
that's great.
And that may start, if everything goes well, tomorrow, they can start as early as next Monday
Wow.
on the excavation. But we have to finish reviewing the plans that we just got this week, so. And then I do know that they were doing some soil borings for the senior housing living facility that is right adjacent to the park and behind like Place and behind between Spruce and Highway 55.
Okay.
So that's tentatively a 4-story assisted living, a la carte type services building with potential of a second phase being a full-fledged nursing home. But all we have so far on that is that they've been doing some soil work.
Is there any of that stuff that Jeff put in that email that you think would be appropriate to talk about here?
The only thing, yeah, Jeff sent a quick email out earlier today, or yesterday, I think, that he wasn't going to be here, but that maybe we want to talk about things that are happening socially that could be a potential boon for population to Painesville as people leave bigger communities, maybe to come to smaller communities, and how we prepare for that in industrial and city facilities and school district.
And I did ask Matt about enrollment. We had a bump last year, which was great to see. And so, I mean, it's pretty early projections, but we are up 2 students as of right now of where we were last year. So at least it's not a negative, as some districts are seeing. So I think that's, I mean, of course, we want more students in our district too. So any way we can partner on any of those initiatives, I think, is best for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And this past year, the city went over 2,500, which changes some of our financial reporting and deed reporting. But we did hit over 2,500 for the unofficial.
I think that the district is doing, I think, from what I see, I think you guys are taking a lot of steps to be more proactive and forward-thinking, and I really appreciate that, and I think that that is part of what Jeff was talking about as far as preparing for an influx of students and families.
Yeah, I know, I mean, Matt's been a great leader and even doing the podcast and different things. It's just, you have to do all the things right now, which is hard, but you have to be out there. People are researching where they want to live, where do they want their students to go to school. I mean, where I work at St. Ben's, I have colleagues that live everywhere from the cities to Little Falls to all over. They're choosing to live where they want to raise their family, and then they'll commute. And so I think that is an opportunity that people have choice now, and they are looking at things. So we have to make sure that our information's out there, our website got updated, just trying to be more present so people can have access and see who we are as a district. But that's also challenging because the school district doesn't have a marketing firm. They're not marketers. And so they've really had to exercise some new skills and kind of utilize different people to promote ourselves a little bit more. I think we still have a long ways to go, but I think the more we can partner on that, I mean, we're going to have to if we want growth.
The talk of Painesville has been really fun. The Thursday morning
the
videos,
podcast.
yeah, it's been really good.
Mhm.
Anything else? Okay, well then we will adjourn. Oh, wait. Can we set a date for our next?
Absolutely.
Sure, can I ask a question first before we do that? So some of the things like we talked about is potentially collaborating more on the library, just even on, like we just talked about, how, like, will people just be in communication with Matt, or will those be ad hoc committees? I mean, how do we stay informed or in the loop to keep some of those things moving forward?
That is a great question.
I think a lot of it is pretty premature right now, so as things develop, I would imagine either the mayor or the city admin would be in contact with Matt
Okay.
to put something together. And then October, I think, is the next time we're thinking,
Okay.
which really isn't that far in city
Yeah.
government terms. So, then we can put something together then.
Okay.
It's just me thinking off the top of my head.
Right, and then maybe if we get a committee going that invite somebody from the school to be on that committee,
Yeah.
Yeah.
would be probably the best way to communicate back and forth.
Yeah, maybe like an ad hoc with representatives from all the different entities. And-
Yeah, that would be great.
But yeah, I think we're not quite to that point yet, but
Okay.
I wanted to put it out there
Yep.
as a,
As a feeler.
yeah. Yeah, keep it on your radar. So, October.
So the 5th would be viable. 13th. 1st, 8th.
Did we have a time frame from Liza for, were we gonna be doing interviews in October? Or was that
19th and 20th.
Do you have?
the 19th and 20th? Okay. Do you have do Mondays work for, you guys have your school board meetings on Tuesdays usually?
On Tuesdays. We have some of our committee meetings on Mondays, but they're not scheduled out yet, so.
Should we try for the 5th at 5?
Sure.
Is that the same, we have a council meeting at 6?
No, there'd be a planning commission meeting that night.
Nope.
No?
We moved ours to the 3rd Monday.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Because the library is meeting on the 1st Monday. So. Then COVID hit and can't use the same facilities.
Okay.
Should we try for the 1st for a community working session, or 5th, excuse me? The 5th, the 1st Monday?
I would say, yeah.
5 o'clock.
Okay, then, is there anything else? With that, we will officially adjourn